Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 851. Silence as loud as a clap of thunder. In just an instant, the queer feeling disappeared as quickly as it had come. Jun Moxie lowered his head silently, but his brain was replaying the entire experience with lightning speed. Every single person that had walked past the area was imprinted clearly in his mind with his super memory as he screened each one of them carefully. Not much time had passed, and even the person who'd walked the furthest was only around 100 zhang away. Furthermore, although there were a lot of people on the street just now, it was actually less than 1.000. With such a population density, it could be described huge. But Jun Moxie's powerful spiritual sense was able to perfectly recreate the entire scene in his mind, allowing him to scrutinize each and every single person clearly. In the end, his spiritual sense was locked onto 7 people. Only those 7 people. These 7 people had all just stepped into the peripheries of his 100 zhang spiritual sense detection range. After a round of elimination, Jun Moxie finally turned his body lightly and walked back. Before him, there was a black-robed youth walking forward at an even pace, not too quick and not too slow. His right leg seemed to be somewhat inconvenient as he hobbled ever so slightly. His face was completely expressionless, and his eyes were turbid. His eyelids were a little swollen, and his footsteps were light, as if he would be blown away by a gust of wind. But Jun Moxie's instincts told him that there was definitely something fishy about this person, because he could sense a faint trace of evil from him. This kind of evil energy was strangely familiar, yet alien. Furthermore, there was an odd feeling that even Jun Moxie felt somewhat frightened of. If this person was an expert, he must have reached such a terrifying level where even his essence and aura could be retracted back into himself, returning to simplicity. Jun Moxie had never seen such a level of strength, even on a saint emperor. Jun Moxie's spiritual sense told him that this person's path was actually leading towards the weakest point in the 3 Holy Lands' spiritual sense web. As his steps slanted towards that direction more and more, this feeling of his grew more obvious. The 3 Holy Lands experts' spiritual sense sweep always somehow missed this person, because each time the spiritual sense swept by, he would have already dodged it in advance. Quite clearly, this person was also using his own spiritual sense to probe, allowing him to determine his path with certainty. The most ridiculous thing was that the 3 Holy Lands clearly had several saint emperors present, but none of them had been able to discover him. Such an ability was something that even Jun Moxie could not do. If not for that split second of aura, even Jun Moxie would not have discovered this person's spiritual senses fluctuations. This person, although his actions looked casual and ordinary, Jun Moxie's keen senses detected that the fine hairs on his body were in the most optimally relaxed state. His way he walked was the least energy-consuming, the simplest way. Every action of his, although looking simple and normal, seemed to have a profound meaning behind it in Jun Moxie's eyes. As he looked at this black-robed man's back, his lips curled slightly as a mysterious smile appeared on his face. It couldn't be him, right? Just as young Master Jun had a flash of inspiration and guessed the mysterious man's identity, the latter suddenly halted and turned around, facing Jun Moxie. An odd smile lingered in his eyes as he laughed. "Kid, you followed this young master for so long. Could it be you wish to treat me to a drink?" Jun Moxie froze slightly and he looked up with a smile as well. "Why not? To meet is also considered a kind of fate. What's a treat worth? I can certainly treat you to a drink, But I didn't bring any silvers with me now. How about you foot the bill first? And I'll return it to you another time. Wanting to take advantage of this elder brother Jun? You must be dreaming. But if it's just me doing the treating while you foot the bill, that can still be discussed. Fated as expected. This is truly a coincidental meeting. The black-robed man shrugged and said, I didn't bring any silvers as well. He looked at Jun Moxie with a strange look. I wonder if it's possible to drink without silver. Jun Moxie mimicked his actions, shrugging lightly and smiling. How about, we give it a try? Perhaps we can still get to drink. Interesting. Interesting. The black-robed man chuckled and looked at Jun Moxie calmly. Try. Let's try. Since none of us brought any silvers, and you wanted me to treat you to a drink, let me be the host for this meal then. Please. Jun Moxie said generously and stretched his hand out to indicate the way. So it's possible to play host even without any silvers. The world has truly changed. The black-robed man shook his head and said with some emotion. The two traveled together, towards a certain direction. In front of them was the Tongguan Hall. Young Master Jun was revisiting an old haunt. Although the two were practically walking shoulder to shoulder, keeping pace with each other, and they looked very peaceful and harmonious on the surface, their actions were filled with strange pace changes. When Jun Moxie moved forward, the black-robed man would lift his leg right after Jun Moxie stepped out, moving towards the same direction. The black-robed man was standing on Jun Moxie's right-hand side, but with every step, Jun Moxie's right shoulder would, intentionally or otherwise, move backwards a little. Stepping forward, but pulling back with the shoulders. Such postures were undoubtedly extremely strange. It was as if some invisible line was pulling him back, but he wanted to move forward. The black-robed man's actions were coincidentally the opposite. Jun Moxie's steps were all right before he raised his leg, but his shoulders were leaning forward. Fortunately, they were not moving very quickly. Otherwise, they would look like they were barging around randomly. The postures of the both of them were both unique, but one thing was certain. If they were moving at full speed, Jun Moxie would definitely fall flat on his back before long. Of course, at the moment that Jun Moxie lost his control, the black-robed man would also end up falling on top of him, kissing him straight on the lips. The two of them maintained that weird posture, actually even managing to chat cheerfully and jovially along the way, seemingly very pleased with themselves. In the instant their sights crossed, the other party would gaze at their own postures, either moving half a step forward or shifting slightly backwards. They would not let the other party's eyes land on the place they were looking at. By the time they arrived before Tongguan Hall, the two looked as if they'd been through a tough battle. Even their foreheads were filled with sweat. The entire journey was only a short dozen or so zhang. But secretly, they've already exchanged several hundred rounds of blows. Practically every lift of the foot, every wave of the hand, every step, and the slight movement of the shoulders was accompanied by an exchange of skill. The exhaustion of mental strength was extremely heavy, and from the looks of it, their exchange had not been inferior to an exhilarating battle. Although Jun Moxie always maintained the initiative, he wasn't able to gain the advantage in shifting his body's center of gravity. This extremely odd battle was actually the most terrifying one he'd been involved in ever since he crossed over to this world. Young Master Jun would never have imagined that there was actually someone with the same reaction speed as him, who'd cultivated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Even if he merely raised his eyebrows slightly, or moved his eyes, the black-robed man would always have the most appropriate countermeasure. and the positions he'd concealed were all the most optimal points for Jun Moxie to attack. Young Master Jun, who'd guessed the identity of the person, could not help but exclaim from the bottom of the heart. There are indeed no weaklings with a great reputation. Because he knew that he'd actually been contending with the opponent while having a big advantage. This black-clothed man, who was now equally matched with him, was carrying heavy injuries. His strength was practically running on empty. Furthermore, the wound on him was enough to kill any other average man 100 times. But in such a situation, he was actually able to control Jun Moxie perfectly. My luck today is too great. Although the black-clothed man's walking posture seemed passive, he held the absolute initiative all the way in reality. The only light flaw in the entire process was just the first move by young Master Jun, causing him to lose the initiative to Jun Moxie, which he never managed to regain again. But even though he'd lost the initiative, his postures turned completely in a reactive, defensive position. Although the two looked fairly matched, to the naturally lofty black-robed man, this was an unbearable shame. He'd actually let a little brat ride all over his head, forcing him into a reactive state all the way. Every time he wanted to take the lead and step out first, he would be disrupted by that kid's subtle brow movements, or head movements. If he tried to seize the initiative back by force, he would have to pay a heavy price. Bloody hell. He hadn't come out for a few hundred years. But had the Xian abilities of this world grown to such a shocking level? Even a hairless little brat was such a perverse monster. Hooey. Even calling him a hairless brat is an overstatement. This fellow is simply a snotty-nosed rascal still reeking of his mother's milk. But this little rascal, whether it be in strength of soul, spiritual sense, or reaction, has reached a miraculous level. Unblinking even if heaven and hell becomes a sea of blood. Not turning back to look even if the 9 nethers overflows with hate. Body transforming into the heavens and earth. Heart roaming freely like a dragon's pearl. This was a realm that he'd reached only after hundreds of years of painstaking cultivation. If there were a few more of such perversely powerful characters in this world, was there still a point of him partaking in this world? Surely this was too insane. The short tens of zhang distance that they'd walked so far was only a quiet exchange of skills without using any xian skills. However, the risks and dangers they faced were shocking. If it were a real fight, and the cultivation of the two of them were similar, then no matter which one of them, both of them would already have died hundreds of times over. There was an old saying that goes, silence as loud as a clap of thunder. The hidden battle they'd just engaged was an excellent example of that. Perhaps even the most striking thunder in a quiet place was less shocking than this soundless exchange. Although the battle was fierce, the road had come to its end. In the instant they walked into the Tongguan Hall, the battle was concluded. Both sides had their some scruples, and they did not linger on the matter. Finding an empty table, they sat down across each other. The black-robed man's face remained as expressionless as before, but the back of his robe had obviously been drenched. The previous battle, though short, had exhausted a great amount of mental energy. Young Master Jun was even more unresigned. He placed both his hands to support his waist, rubbing them in an unrefined manner. For the entire journey, he'd been walking in a strange manner, causing him to feel as if his back were about to break. If the road had been slightly longer, and he'd continued moving in that manner, it would be a miracle if he didn't develop any long-lasting back problems. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 852. Why are you so difficult to please? Jun Moxie waved his hand and called over the waiter. casually ordering some dishes without even glancing at the price. He directly ordered a huge table of dishes, causing the waiter to celebrate internally as he brought over a pot of tea before running to the kitchen to inform the chefs. That handsome young master was obviously a rich person. This time, his commission would surely be huge. But who would have thought that this rich-looking young master was actually just an empty shell? Not only would he not have the money to pay for the entire table of food, he didn't even have any money to pay for a single dish. "What's your name?" The black-robed man looked at Jun Moxie and asked with a deadpan expression. Jun Moxie realized that this fellow had actually managed to cultivate to such a high level that even the look in his eyes could be changed at will. Is there really a need to ask for a name? Names are just symbols. What's the point of going through so much trouble? Jun Moxie looked at him exasperatedly. How nice would it be to just have a good drink? After drinking, you go your way and I go mine. Isn't that more straightforward? Nonsense. You used your spiritual sense to probe this young master and followed behind me like a fly, all to have a drink with me? Do you think this young master is an idiot? The black-robed man said icily. Stop playing the fool with this young master. What do you want? Quickly say it. All right. I'll speak honestly. There's no need to raise your voice and speak so domineeringly. Jun Moxie smiled in a graceful manner, pretentiously. Although the black-robed man was behaving coldly, his interest was still aroused as he asked, "What's the reason?" Jun Moxie splayed his hands and spoke. Truthfully. It's like this, from the moment I first saw you, I discovered that you're like a firefly in the darkness, radiating eye-catching light. Although you were among a sea of people, an outstanding man like you stood out like a crane amongst a group of chickens no matter where you went. Your individual splendor was so great that it caused me to feel incredibly amazed and impressed. Your dazzling radiance caused me to feel faint, and I felt like if I couldn't treat you to a drink, it would be a great crime, the gravest of sins. Even 3 lifetimes of regret would not be able to describe the gut-wrenching regret I would have felt if that happened. So even though I didn't have any money, I was still determined to treat you to a drink. Stop. The black-robed man's cold expression finally broke, and his emotionless eyes moved. He raised his head, rolled his eyes, and looked at the ceiling for a long time, looking as if he was about to faint. Finally, he shook his head a few times and smacked the table. Rascal thing. What the father fecking feck are you talking about? Are those the words of a human? Did I not make myself clear enough? I basically meant to say, you and I are fated. Our fate has lasted for many lifetimes. In the last life, I was a man and you were a woman. Jun Moxie said with complete seriousness, his tone deep and emotional. A look of truthfulness shone in his eyes as he continued with conviction. You were my wife. Your mum's fart. Why don't you just go and die? The black-robed man's 1,000 over years cultivated patience and self-reservation completely disappeared in an instant as he swore incoherently. His face had already turned as dark as the bottom of a wok. Even from the arms that he'd placed on the table, one could see a layer of goosebumps slowly rising out. His body frame that was normally as stable as a mountain was shaking as if he were sitting in a freezer. I know you have your doubts, but it's the truth. Jun Moxie shook his head and said, if you don't believe me, you could go down there and ask around. Although all our relatives from the last life are no longer around, their souls are still there. If you can go and ask them, I'm sure they will definitely give you a reply. This way, you should believe me now, right? My fated person. Go and ask. So I should kill myself first and then go to the underworld to seek the answers? Fated person. Dog fart fated person. The black-robed man who was on the brink of collapse grabbed the two sides of the table, his veins bulging dangerously as he gritted his teeth tightly. His eyes were blazing with fire, and even his breath had become heavy and ragged. Little rascal. You think that it's very fun to play with this young master? Do you know how to write the word death? His veins along his temples throbbed heavily as he spoke, and his eyes raged with anger. It had been over 1,000 years, and no one had ever been able to anger him to such an extent before. No matter when, he'd always maintained a graceful attitude like an unstained prince. Even when he was being chased around by the entire world, this hadn't changed at all. Even when faced against a situation of near certain death, he still greeted it in a graceful manner. But after meeting this brat today, this mental state of his had been completely shredded into pieces. How could his mental state be this unstable? But that fellow's words were simply too disgusting. Who can bear it? Look at you. I already said that there wasn't a specific purpose, but you wanted me to say it. Now that I've said it, you don't believe me. Jun Moxie shrugged his shoulders helplessly. Why are you so difficult to please? After saying that, he narrowed his eyes and continued. Besides, even if I really have a motive, did you think that I would tell you just because you asked? Aren't you a bit too naive? Although naive people are cute, it's quite a challenge to even survive in this complicated world. Your strength is not bad, but it's not enough to deal with the schemes of the pugilistic world. You should listen to me. Jun Moxie advised seriously. The black-robed man suddenly spat out a long breath of air. This breath stretched on for 5 whole minutes, until Jun Moxie's words were stuck in his mouth, and his hair and sleeves fluttered behind him like a heavenly celestial. One could see that this person's anger had already been pent up to a level far above what a normal person could endure. After he was done, he slapped the table heavily, shouting, "Waiter! Why isn't the food served yet? Could it be that you are going to the fields to plant the grains now? Hurry it up for this old man." He turned his head, not even looking at Jun Moxie. He felt that if he looked at that detestable sissy face again, he would not be able to stop himself from risking the worsening of his heavy injuries to pluck out the tongue of this little creature. He felt incredibly exasperated in his heart. This old man has lived for more than 1,000 years. But I've never seen such a base person. How motherfucking infuriating. You were the man and I was the wife in our past life. This young master will feck you. Just with this young master's 1,000 years of age, it should be more than enough for you brat to live more than 10 lifetimes. The black-robed man rolled his eyes speechlessly. All this was too sudden, and he felt that it was a grave mistake. If he knew that he would meet such a character, he would have rather remained sealed underground for another 500 years. Ho ho ho, this little brother. Jun Moxie chuckled in a hair-raising manner, asking, "What's your esteemed name?" This little brother? The black-robed man's face was instantly filled with black lines. Clenching his teeth forcefully and sucking in a deep breath of cold air, he spat. What the feck? Even the ancestor of your ancestor of your ancestor does not have the qualifications to call this young master little brother. Do you understand? All right. I understand. It's just a form of address. Why are you so upset again, then, this old brother? What's your age? Jun Moxie changed his words and said with a friendly smile. The black-robed man banged his head against the table and grabbed his hair with both hands, seemingly breathless with anger. Faint wheezing sounds came out of his mouth as he gnashed his teeth. Can you just shut your damn mouth? Will you die if you don't talk? It's naturally fine to not talk. But it shouldn't be linked to the level of life and death, right? Could it be that this old brother is still not happy with this form of address? Then how about young bro? Old pal? Which one do you like more? Don't look at me with such fierce eyes. This one's heart is thumping madly because of it. Actually, the food at this Tongguan Hall is really very good. The last time I was here. That taste, it's truly delicious. It was somebody else's treat the last time and that was simply enjoyable. This time, it's my turn to do the treating. But I didn't bring any silvers. Jun Moxie blabbered on and on, his mouth continuing non-stop as he asked anxiously. Heir, although I did say I was treating today, but you really didn't bring any money? Money. That means silver coins, bronze coins, paper money, or gold is fine too. You really didn't bring any? The black-robed man lifted his head lightly and banged it down against the table repeatedly, all the while accompanied by helpless sighs on the verge of tears. It's fine. It's fine. There's no need to feel so sad. Jun Moxie patted his chest and consoled. Relax. Isn't it just a meal? Besides, forgetting to bring some silvers is not any embarrassing matter. Everyone's experienced it before. I already said that I'm treating, so they won't accuse you of being a free loafer. Let me tell you, the last time I was. The black-robed man raised his head with a despondent face and looked at young Master Jun, as if he were beholding a tall mountain with awe and great admiration. Suddenly he grabbed Jun Moxie's hands and cried out with tears in his eyes. Elder brother. I'll call you elder brother. Okay? This lifetime, for over 1.300 years, I've never been convinced with anyone with before. But today, I'm truly convinced by you. Could you just shut your mouth? Just shut your mouth. My dear elder brother, By the end of his sentence, the black-robed man was already howling and banging his head against the table in a deranged manner, such a painful sight. Anyone who saw it would feel a surge of pity rise from their hearts. This fellow looked like someone whose chrysanthemum had just been abused by a gang of Xian beasts. And those Xian beasts were all huge and powerful creatures like bears, lions, tigers, elephants, and such. His voice was simply a little too loud. And right now was still a peak hour meal time for the restaurant. In an instant, all the guests in the Tongguan Hall turned their heads to look, scratching their heads with confusion. What was all this about elder brothers and little brothers? What's going on to cause such a commotion? Jun Moxie cleared his throat dryly for a moment, stood up and clasped his fists to the crowd as he explained. My apologies everyone. My brother here is autistic. He's fine normally and is a good person. As he said that, a chorus of "oh-chich" rang out through the restaurant. You're the autistic one. Your entire family is autistic. The black-robed man waved his sleeves and roared, his face painted with wrath, his entire body tottering like a chrysanthemum flickering in the wind. He was truly angered to an extreme point. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 853. Comprehension True Self. Origin. Everyone should have already guessed by now. This black-robed man was precisely the expert infamous throughout the entire continent. The number one lunatic under the heavens, the 14th young master. But this legendary number one lunatic under the heavens was currently forced to the verge of tears, depressed beyond words. After the battle at Tianfa, this number one lunatic had even truly earned the title of number one expert. Being ambushed by so many saints and even the frenzied attacks of saint emperors, while he was weakened, he still survived from his extremely severe injuries. At the very least, wanting to recover to his original strength was an impossible matter. So although he had a great deal of unwillingness in his heart, he could only hide away to recuperate, in the hopes of returning to dominate the world as soon as possible. But after just 1 month, a certain song suddenly spread madly through the entire continent, and with frightening speed, quickly on the mouths of everyone in the Xian continent. This 14th young master did not claim to be a young master for nothing. He was also a feverish music enthusiast. In fact, his personal weapon was actually a strange musical instrument made from melted 9 nether frost blades that looked like a cross between a zither and a guqin. That song was something that even he considered divine music. From this, one could tell the extent that he loved good music. When he was only halfway through this song of laughing proudly in the pugilistic world, he immediately proclaimed it as music from the heavens. He was so enchanted by it to the point where he even forgoed food and drink, spending all his time pondering it. But the most unbearable thing was that no matter where it spread, it was never the complete version, it was always lacking something compared to the original. This caused the music enthusiast 14th young master to feel exceedingly depressed. After inquiring around, he finally confirmed that this song first originated from this chrysanthemum city. At the same time, there was an accompanying legend that a charming white-robed young master unstained by the filth of the world was playing this song and singing atop the Tongguan Hall when a heaven-shocking battle occurred. Defeating 2 esteemed venerable experts and a large number of cultivators, he departed in an exceedingly graceful manner, singing and riding the clouds like an immortal. In just a single night, that mysterious, white-robed youth had turned into an idol in the hearts of all women in the world. From the looks of it, he'd even become the 14th young master's idol. But the 14th young master also understood that because of that white-robed youth, the 3 holy lands would also send out countless peak-level experts and gather them in Chrysanthemum City. Although his injuries had improved, they were still exceedingly heavy. He didn't have the ability to engage in a real fight. But after careful considerations, he still decided to make the trip. The 3 holy lands were undoubtedly assembling there to deal with that mysterious, white-robed youth. If they truly succeeded, then the Song of the Proud, Smiling Wanderer would really become the youth's swan song. In other words, from then on, it would be impossible to hear the original version anymore. To a music enthusiast like the 14th young master, this was an unbearable thought. So he came. Apart from that, the 14th young master was confident that as long as he did not reveal his traces and used any of his unique Xian techniques, even if all the ancestor-level characters from the 3 holy lands and the misty illusory manor lined up in front of him, they would not recognize him. So although he couldn't attack, he was actually not very worried about his safety. Today was actually the first day that he'd stepped into Chrysanthemum City. And it had even been less than an hour since he'd entered this mecca for music, making his way towards the famed Tongguan Hall, fantasizing about meeting the idol in his heart. What kind of a person was this musical talent that could make a song like the Song of the Proud, Smiling Wanderer? But who would have thought that before he had had the chance to meet his idol, he would bump into such a base character? A base fellow whose ability and age were high enough to shock even him, whose mouth was so infuriating that it made him want to tear his hair out. It wasn't clear what was wrong with the kid's head, to follow him around like that all of a sudden for no apparent reason. He had tried to shake him off, but it was impossible to shake him off. Then after competing for the entire journey, he could confirm that the little fellow was definitely not simple. At least, the latter had the qualifications to share the same table with him. Then, he was somewhat curious about the kid. Who is he? What does he want? And most importantly, did he recognize my true identity? Why would he fix his eyes on me in the first place? Could it be there's some flaws in my concealment? So the 14th young master accepted the little fellow's invitation. Since he was going to Tongguan Hall anyway, and somebody was volunteering to treat, why wouldn't he go? The 14th young master did not think that this youth before him could do anything to him anyway. But right now, he truly regretted it. At this moment, he felt that him accepting this fellow's invitation was the worst mistake he'd committed in this last 1.300 over years. If only time could be rewinded, this young master would rather receive a harsh beating than share a table with this person. No, he wouldn't even have exchanged a single word with him. It was really too tormenting. From what he remembered, he'd only asked that despicable fellow for a name. In the end, the matters leading from that single question had nearly caused him to collapse. If he had asked a few more questions, the 14th young master felt his entire body tremble intensely from the mere thought of that terrifying awe. The most scary thing was that right now, he couldn't even use a single ounce of Xian Qi. Right now, he was in the center of Chrysanthemum City, the place where trouble was most prone to occur. All the experts of the 3 holy lands were gathered here. If it were in the past, he wouldn't fear anything even if his identity was exposed. But since his strength hadn't recovered yet, he didn't dare to reveal himself. Although he and the 3 holy lands had a great hatred between them, if it came down to choose between destroying them or saving himself, he would definitely choose to preserve his own life. The strongest characters here now were all saint-level experts. Most of them were old enemies who wouldn't rest until he was dead. As long as he exposed even the slightest aura, they would definitely rush over and surround him completely, ripping him to shreds. With his current strength, not mentioning defeating them, even escaping was a problem. But if he didn't use his abilities, wanting to get rid of this relentless fly in front of him was simply an impossible dream. Just like that, the 14th young master fell into a tragic situation. And it was a very tragic situation. An unprecedented tragic situation that he'd never encountered ever since the day he was born. Right now, the 14th young master had a miserable feeling as if he were a dragon that had fallen down into a ditch, or a tiger cast out of a mountain. Even when the table was completely filled with food, this #1 lunatic under the heavens had still not extricated himself from that miserable state. Looking at Jun Moxie's eyes, it seemed as if he was waiting to eat someone alive. Come, come, come. Please eat. Please eat. No need to be courteous. Jun Moxie gestured warmly. Judging from a standpoint of a good host, Jun Moxie would definitely score extremely highly. But his next sentence caused the 14th young master to feel an urge to flip the table with rage. In any case, we didn't bring any money, so it's a dine and dash, Kiki. We might as well eat. Hurry up. There'll be food if your mouth is fast. If your mouth is slow, there won't be any. The 14th young master had only just picked up his chopsticks and he nearly spat out the wine in his mouth as he looked at Jun Moxie exasperatedly. This young master is quite curious. Can you still be even more shameless? Don't speak nonsense, ah. How is this young master shameless? This young master wanted to treat you to a meal out of goodwill. And you actually stain my name like this? You're really difficult to get along with. However, since you've asked, this young master will still be generous and teach you a thing or two. This thing called shamelessness is actually something without a limit. The art of shamelessness is actually a broad path that leads to heaven. It's a major field of study that's easy to pick up but difficult to master. It's something that's worth a lifetime of research and experimenting. That one could endlessly explore, create, and learn. We need to persevere in our pursuit of this knowledge, studying and learning earnestly. We must always strive to break through to greater realms of shamelessness. Of course, this young master is only a careless beginner in this field. How could you say that this young master is being shameless? Jun Moxie gestured gracefully and explained, as if he was reciting a poem. There's no need to continue. I've already witnessed the highest peak of this field of study from you. I believe that in this particular field of expertise, your achievements has already surpassed the ancients and amazed the contemporaries. Unprecedented and unparalleled in history. Unexampled ever afterwards. The 14th young master sighed in a heartfelt manner. Grabbing the wine jar, he raised it to his mouth and swallowed in huge gulps. His face was the very picture of the words, "There is no grief so great as despair." Apart from drinking, he did not have the mood to pick up even a single piece of food on the table. Without any appetite, forcing oneself to eat would be no different from eating wax. In that case, one might as well not eat. Jun Moxie chuckled secretly in his heart, but his spiritual sense was keenly posting tabs on every single action of the person opposite him, comparing it with his own understanding in his heart. Right now, he was already certain that this person was the 14th young master. Furthermore, he could tell that the 14th young master's injuries had obviously not recovered yet. Otherwise, how would Jun Moxie dare to behave so outrageously in front of him? This was a well-known lunatic. If he still had any strength left, just a single slap would be able to smash into meat paste. Although young Master Jun never thought lightly of himself, he still acknowledged the shocking strength of the 14th young master. But now, he no longer had those scruples. Jun Moxie would naturally not expose his true identity. All that nonsense and random talk earlier was actually done with a purpose. Otherwise, with Jun Moxie's character, how could he possibly do something that only provided temporary joy yet would leave behind huge troubles? But after this round of interaction, Jun Moxie discovered that the 14th young master was actually not as brash and explosive as the stories described. The 14th young master didn't have any airs about him, nor any overbearing flares. Actually, this was also the same kind of realm that Jun Moxie was pursuing. It was also the reason for his endless nonsense earlier. Because he was consulting and comprehending. The 14th young master's every movement and expression represented his achievements. And this achievement was also guiding Jun Moxie in his comprehension, step by step. Every step taken for a person from poverty to success was actually a process. Without status and power, one would behave in a certain way. But when they attained success, even the most humble people would have times when they forgot themselves. This was human nature, and there was nothing to be said against it. That was why people of that level often began to pursue things like class, bearing, and all the things that could display one's so-called inner qualities. Whether it was being aloof or indifference to the world, or arrogant and domineering, they were all a kind of mask. So-called aristocratic bearings were exactly so. Purposefully pursuing such things, even if one obtained them, they would only end up losing their true self. Only by taking another step further from that level could one reach the true peak. Beginning to recognize what they truly wanted. And people of that level always used their true feelings to face the world, come what may. If they wanted to cry, they would cry. If they wanted to laugh, they would laugh. There were no masks, no hypocrisy. That was what it truly meant to return to simplicity. returning to simplicity with martial arts, achieving the same goal with different means. But returning to simplicity with one's true character was the real transcendent realm. Only the current 9 Nether 14th young master was the best example of such a natural being. This kind of realm, when paired with the return to simplicity with martial arts, would form the true expert. Such outstanding people were truly rare. For the entire planet, there might not even be one person achieving such a level of harmonization even in several thousand years. This was the true level of self-achievement. Even young Master Jun himself had not reached such a level. Since the course of known history, young Master Jun only knew of 2 persons at most who'd achieved such a realm. The first was the 9 Nether first young master, who'd actually reached an even higher level that transcended even the realms of returning to the natural state. As for the other person, it was this 9 Nether 14th young master in front of him. Although the 9 Nether 14th young master was still far off from 9 Nether first young master's level, he was still truly in that realm. Jun Moxie wanted to see just how far had he reached in that kind of realm. Could he truly merge his true self and his martial arts together such that they were both a part of himself in the most natural sense? And how far away was he from such a realm? Was it within reach, or still a far-away thing? Ever since he'd heard about the deeds of the 9 Nether young masters, Jun Moxie had a faint kind of understanding, regardless of whether they be praise or scorn. Whenever the 9 Nether young masters were discussed, regardless of who it was, the evaluation was always the same. Whether they were considered as mad, wild, or overbearing, these people were always true to themselves. Because of this, Jun Moxie thought of something. Could it be that this was a result of some kind of special cultivation technique? So after he had this thought, he specially went into the Hongjun Pagoda and searched through the information database. At the end, he came to a conclusion that even left him shocked beyond words. There really was such a realm. This realm was called True Self. If one did not even have their true self, whether they threw it away or lost it, what meaning was there in talking about cultivating immortality? What was there to talk about breaking the void and achieving the grand Tao? So even in Taoist teachings, there was something called origin. So the true reason young Master Jun approached the 9 Nether 14th young master was because apart from gaining the opportunity to meet the 9 Nether first young master again, there was only the 9 Nether 14th young master. That was the reason why he tried all kinds of tricks today to rile up the 9 Nether 14th young master's emotions. He was trying to comprehend this origin by observing the 9 Nether 14th young master's reactions. As the 9 Nether 14th young master's emotions grew more and more volatile and somewhat out of control, Jun Moxie's comprehension also improved. In fact, a breakthrough was even near at hand. True self. Origin. So that's how it is. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 854. Are you number 15? Speaking to here, Jun Moxie actually still needed to thank the 3 Holy Lands. If not for the 3 Holy Lands saint-level experts teaming up to injure the 9 Nether 14th young master, and if not for the fact that there were so many experts in this chrysanthemum city, preventing this fellow from acting rashly, how would the 9 Nether 14th young master possibly sit here and endure his anger? If not for this fortuitous encounter this time, who knew how long it would take for Jun Moxie to comprehend this realm? True self. Origin did not mean living as one pleased, without care for consequences. Because no matter how unrestrained one was, there was always one rule to adhere to: they must have absolute power. Only when a person had absolute power could they act as they pleased, without a care for others' opinion. But imagine a newborn infant who'd just come into the world. Even if a magnificent and powerful tiger loomed over it, threatening to eat it, the infant would still cry and create a tantrum if it was hungry and wanted milk. It wouldn't feel any fear. This was the truest, natural default that everyone was born with. If these natural reactions were amplified many times and applied to any areas, when every area of a person was changed to that natural level of instinct and behavior, one would have truly reverted to nature. Jun Moxie spat out a long breath. So the truth is actually like that. No wonder so few people in this world succeeded. So the main reason is this. All the people who practice martial arts in this world pursued either increased strength of their physical bodies or spirit powers cultivation which could contend against great strength. Yet, they neglected the existence of their self, which is the so-called true self, or the origin. But even if one reached the apex of strength, or if their cultivation reached the very limits, what then? Even the greatest of strengths had a limit. Apart from needing to be complemented with an equivalent level of spirit power, it required a sufficiently stable body to hold this great strength. And this body was unquestionably the self. As Buddhism often said, the physical body was the treasured cage that one must break free of to transcend beyond. Most people would deviate further and further from this path in their pursuit for more power, until finally, they've lost themselves, losing the original meaning of their true self. Such people were no longer using and controlling power. Rather, their bodies were being used by the power, turning them into nothing but vessels with only the mindless craze to seek more power. This was the kind of dangerous development always depicted in fantasy stories. People who pursued only power would eventually be consumed by power. That way, the order had been completely reversed. It would be a wonder if they could achieve anything. These people were already at the verge of suffering from cultivation deviation, wanting to ascend to an even higher realm. That was simply a fool's dream. Now that Jun Moxie had a rare flash of comprehension, he was naturally reluctant to let it go as he meditated seriously. If he began progressing with this state from the start, what would be the results? Without a doubt, the 9 nether 14th young master and the other 9 nether young masters all trained like this from the beginning, which was why the results were so good. But there was also one major drawback, the endless magnification of their self-confidence. Although it was good to be confident in oneself, but this kind of overconfidence would instead cause a person to, whether intentionally or not, become wild and uncontrollable. Because all of them felt that in this world, there was nothing that they couldn't do. They were the strongest and were invincible. Everyone should rightfully be bowing under their feet, worshipping them, and serving them. That way, this problem was actually incredibly severe. After all, not everyone could reach the level of the 9 nether first young master. A peerless character like him was something that only appeared once in history thus far. Although the 9 nether young masters after the 9 nether first young master were also shockingly amazing characters, but their strengths were still far from reaching the terrifying levels that the first young master had achieved back then. When a person's confidence and arrogance were not backed up by equal levels of strength, the results would only be a tragedy. This was also the reason why among all the 9 nether young masters, only the 9 nether first young master had achieved such glorious results. The other 9 nether young masters were all buried in history. Actually, even the 9 nether first young master had met certain bumpers in his journey as well. Wasn't he eventually also defeated at the hands of another peerless expert? Compared to the other 9 nether young masters, perhaps his luck was only a bit better to not have been attacked by the entire combined force of Xian continent's experts like the other 9 nether young masters. Young Master Jun had never lacked in self-confidence as well. However, He was not so overly confident like the 9 other young masters. Confidence was a good thing, but excessive confidence was actually a detriment. How should one find a balance between confidence and overconfidence? To have enough so as not to inhibit one's own progression, and at the same time be able to face trials and challenges while believing in oneself. Recognizing one's position and drawing strength from within to continue growing. When Jun Moxie was deep in thought, the 9 other 14th young master was looking at him with interest. The 9 other 14th young master, who had been angered to the point of almost vomiting blood a moment ago, had finally managed to recover. He was a clever person, so how could his judgment be weak? Earlier, it was because he'd been too infuriated by Jun Moxie's words that he rambled in that manner. Now that Jun Moxie had suddenly shut his mouth, the 9 other 14th young master also slowly regained his clarity. As he looked carefully, he discovered that not only had this brat stopped talking, his expression had become deep and profound, as if he'd changed into a different person. This brat was actually in the midst of a comprehension. The kid had just finished running his mouth and angered him till he almost died, and in the blink of an eye, he'd entered a meditative state. This was so inconceivable that no one would accept it. The 9 other 14th young master was completely speechless. This fellow, could he get any more shameless? The state of comprehension was something could only be encountered, not sought. Even this young master did not dare to say that I can enter a state of comprehension whenever I want to. What kind of important matter is this? To think that this kid could sit there drinking and spewing nonsense while committing a despicable act like dining without paying, and subsequently gain an inspiration in the middle of it. Wait a moment. This kind of profound aura. It seems rather familiar. Where have I encountered it before? The 9 other 14th young master scrunched his brows deeply and thought. This, how could it be possible? Isn't this the true self-spirit breakthrough of our 9 others tribe? How could this appear in a place like this Xian continent so stained by mortal coils? Thinking to hear. The 9 other 14th young master's eyes widened with shock. Could it be that this brat was also someone from the 9 others tribe? If that were the case, it would be logical for him to recognize me. But if he was able to recognize me, how come I wasn't able to recognize him? Also, why is his spirit aura so strange? Although it is quite similar to our tribe's mental cultivation techniques, but there are still many subtle differences. I guess it can be considered as having the same result achieved by different methods. Also, he hasn't died yet, and he was still here, preparing to fight another large battle. If this kid is truly from the 9 others tribe, how did he come out? And how did he completely not feel anything? Could it be that the 9 others junior's strength have really improved so far that it's beyond my understanding? After a long time, Jun Moxie's fingers moved, and he finally awoke from that miraculous state. He immediately stretched and yawned, rubbing his eyes as he sighed in a shameless manner. Ah, that was a truly comfortable sleep. I haven't had such a great sleep in a long time. He treated the state of comprehension as sleeping. The 9 other 14th young master, who was still in deep thought, instantly had dark lines covering his entire forehead. The anger that he'd suppressed just a moment ago with great difficulty also rose upwards again. Brat. Are you little 15? The 9 other 14th young master asked with an icy expression. Little 15? Jun Moxie was stumped for a moment. What little 15? Cut the crap. This young master has already seen through your identity. How did you come over here? The 9 other 14th young master slapped the table and asked angrily. Don't you know how to respect your elders? Even if you don't care about the people of this world, you should at least be respectful to me. I really wonder how the elders of your family taught you. Hey man. I really don't understand what you're talking about. Are you even speaking Chinese? Jun Moxie frowned with annoyance as he asked. However, his mind instantly turned clear. So this fellow thinks that I'm the 15th young master. Seen through my identity? Feck. I wonder what's going on in his head. Besides, even if this young master wanted to name myself after a number, I would still be the 9 firmament first old master. Why should I be numbered behind you? Brat. Look at this. 14th young master stared at him and stretched out his right arm, placing his 5 long fingers flat against the table's surface. Suddenly, the color of his fingers slowly changed, turning into dark shadows. A layer of milky white mist hung around the shadows. The 14th young master smiled lightly, and his fingers returned to their original form in an instant. This demonstration was extremely quick, and apart from the two of them, nobody else even saw anything strange. This unique transformation was a special technique that only belonged to the 9 Nethers tribe. This technique was actually nothing amazing, and it was only a secret skill that they used as a concealment technique in the 9 Nethers realm. But in this world, it basically did not have much use. However, it had become the unique method used to identify each other. Except the 9 14th young master's efforts today were no different than playing a show to a blind man. It was completely useless. Have you seen it clearly? Still want to continue acting in front of me? The 9 14th young master smiled cynically as he looked at Jun Moxie. He leaned casually against his chair and looked at him with a gaze as if he were evaluating a junior. So, how did you come here? Hurry up and say it. I saw it very clearly. However, I still don't know what to say to you. Just now, I said that you were autistic so as to help you get off the stage. But now, I truly wonder. Jun Moxie shook his head. You aren't really autistic, right? Damn brat. The 9 14th young master stretched out his hand and grabbed Jun Moxie's wrist. Jun Moxie did not dodge, allowing himself to be grabbed. Internally, his guts were already getting knotted up from laughing. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 855. Zhan Mubai's request. So you really weren't. The 9 14th young master retracted his hand, a little embarrassed. He had separated a strand of qi into Jun Moxie's meridians to check. He clearly felt the other party's pure and dense xian qi, but it definitely was not the unique strength that only belonged to the 9 Nether race. Instead, it was a type of extraordinary, profound, and wide-ranging, powerful skill that he had never seen before. It was clear. He had indeed been greatly mistaken. But this lad did not avoid or shun. Allowing me to just grab his pulse was an extremely rare form of trust. The 9 14 young master felt comforted. For thousands of years, this is first person who trusts me so much, although he probably still does not know of my identity. Just at this moment, footsteps came from the entrance of Tongguan Hall that the two were facing. 2 people came walking in, side by side. Behind them, 5 people followed them in a single file. Jun Moxie's pupils constricted, before returning to its normal state. He lifted up his chopsticks and began to feast, not the least concerned. The 9 14th young master had no change in his expression, completely unaffected. Both of them had the same thought. What a coincidence. Bumping into an acquaintance again. Jun Moxie was not in his original appearance, but he was also not in the disguise of the ugly Dongfang de Shu. As to the 9 nether 14th young master, God knew what he looked like originally. But the people who had just entered were truly acquaintances, and common acquaintances of the both of them. The two people who were leading the rest were the Saint Emperor expert of elusive world of immortals, Zhan Moxie, and the Saint Emperor expert who had led the joint attack on the 9 nether 14th young master, Chao Guofeng from Misty Illusory Manor. Those who came in after them were other people from Misty Illusory Manor, the Saint Emperor surnamed Bai and a few others. Jun Moxie and the 9 nether 14th young master had extremely deep impressions of these people. But neither of them showed any signs of abnormality. The 9 nether 14th young master currently had yet to fully recover from his heavy injuries. He had no strength to protect himself. Although young Master Jun was full of energy, but his real capabilities were still insufficient. So he temporarily did not have the rights to go and start a fight directly yet. If there was any flaw in his expression or aura that would give him away, then he would literally be looking for his own death. The three dead enemies had gathered all in this Tongguan hall within one morning. This could be counted as a miracle. This is Tongguan Hall, the #1 place for entertainment in Chrysanthemum City. Be it eating or drinking, or enjoying songs or dance, this place is the best place for it. The person speaking was Zhan Moxie, as the head of the Zhan family. Naturally, he would be the host in Chrysanthemum City. He added in a slightly proud tone. It is also right here, where the song of laughing proudly in the pugilistic world had originated from a couple of days earlier. So popular and appealing to the masses that it spread all over the world in merely a few days. Truly a great place. Chao Guofeng chuckled gracefully. Brother Zhan, you're playing host today, so the few of us shall have a good feast. Today, let's only have small talk and get drunk as much as we wish. All right? Zhan Moxie chuckled. Brother Chao, you didn't need to seal my mouth off first. You must know that with our level, it doesn't matter if we skimp on a meal or not. Since I've invited everyone here. Naturally it is because I have a request to make. Without waiting for Chao Guofeng to reply, Zhan Moxie gestured the way and said, Please, head upstairs. Chao Guofeng stood at the entrance and replied, Why go through the trouble? Why not just sit here? We have been away from the mundane world for many years. Why not let us immerse ourselves amidst the crowd? Take it as a form of cultivation as well. Zhan Moxie chuckled. Huh. Indeed. Experiencing the lifestyle of the mundane world is also a form of cultivation. Let's go with what Brother Chao says. Then, all of them randomly settled down in their seats at a random table in the hall. Although his words sounded pleasing, but Zhan Moxie was feeling a little annoyed. Chao Guofeng refusing to go upstairs for their conversation was the equivalent of rejecting his request. How was a public place like this apt for a confidential discussion? This place was too crowded, and perhaps to the ordinary people, it may be not suitable for a discussion in fear of listening ears. But with a saint's capability, it didn't matter no matter what sort of environment it was. It could all be easily resolved by the voice transference technique. But Chao Guofeng had used this unique environment to tell Zhan Moxie in a roundabout manner. The matter that you want to speak to me with is extremely inconvenient. Don't bring it up again. As a willy fox who had lived for a few hundred years, he was extremely intelligent. He could easily guess what Zhan Moxie wanted to request of him. So he cut it off straight away. It was better than saying it out and making everyone awkward. And Zhan Moxie understood the meaning behind this. The table that they had picked was unfortunately coincidentally near the table Jun Moxie was at. Jun Moxie and the 9 nether 14 young master exchanged looks, revealing a bitter smile. Since you are not from my hometown, Could you have met me before? If we had never met before, then it is really too puzzling for this young master. The 14th young master asked. How should I say this? Perhaps I should put it this way. The biggest reason why I struck a conversation with you is because we are both similarly mistrustful. Jun Moxie had suppressed his own cultivation level to that of a silver xian, but he did not suppress his volume when speaking, talking like a normal person. Because I'm mistrustful, naturally I'd investigate upon seeing you, a suspicious foreigner who suddenly appeared here. And because you are also mistrustful, naturally you'll overthink. What a great, because of mistrust. The 14th young master laughed. That's right. The greatest flaw of humans is that they are too mistrustful. Precisely because of mistrust, they have missed their chance on too many things, to the point they even destroy their own happiness and family. But then again, it is also because of mistrust and caution that many people are able to have achievements. This is the best explanation I have ever heard. Let us have a toast to the word mistrust. What a great mistrust! Ha ha ha! Since ancient times, be it monarchs, generals, officials, or unrivaled experts, which one of them were not mistrustful? Your discussion of mistrust truly matches my tastes. I'm extremely happy. A bright laughter came from beside them. This old man shall also join you for a toast. Please. The person who continued the conversation was Chao Guofeng. His pair of eyes looked at Jun Moxie and the 14th young master, his face expressing the same sentiments he felt. Just as his eyes landed on Jun Moxie, it froze. Then a glint flashed across his eyes. It was a look of extreme shock. He rubbed his eyes, carefully observing Jun Moxie, full of doubt. The look in his eyes slowly changing to that of extreme joy. Chao Guofeng's words had instantly drawn the attention of the other few experts. Young Master Jun and the 14 young masters simultaneously felt 8 powerful spiritual senses coiling around them, thoroughly scanning through every single pore of their body, even lingering for a long time. However, Jun Moxie sharply noticed that there was something off about the look in Chao Guofeng's eyes. Could it be that he had discovered something? The duo held their expressions, as if they had completely did not notice all those spirit scents weaving around them. Smiling, they tilted their heads and gulped down the wine in their cups. Brother Chao is truly in high spirits. Zhan Mubai instantly understood after using his spirit sense on checking out the 2 people at the table nearby. That youth in white could be considered a talent in terms of the mundane world, to have the cultivation level of a silver xian for his age. Although it was extremely rare, it was still insignificant to draw the attention of these saint-level experts. As to the man in black opposite, he was just an ordinary person with nothing unusual about him. Chao Guofeng, suddenly joining the conversation, was clearly trying to change his topic completely, leaving him with no chance to bring it back. This left Zhan Mubai feeling extremely pissed internally. He instantly kept his spirit sense and got straight to the point. Brother Chao, I believe you know what I mean. Although I have been out of the mundane world for a long time, but I am still a member of the Zhan family. My greatest wish is for the family to continue expanding, leaving generations after generations. Today, all I seek is for one of my junior descendants to become a disciple of Brother Chao. Why must Brother Chao be so stubborn? If we are able to make good affinity through this, it will be a benefit to both of us. Chao Guofeng's expression instantly changed, his tone turning serious as he slowly placed his wine cup down. He let out a long sigh. Brother Zhan, since you spoke straight to the point, then I shall be honest with you. You should know that the Zhan family serves the elusive world of immortals. And the illusory manor can accept people from anywhere. But we absolutely must not take any resources that belongs to the three holy lands. You and I are aware of the reasons behind this. Is it me being stubborn? Or are you forcing me to do something? This matter concerns the ancestral teachings that our ancestors left behind. Brother Zhan's constant forcing is an act of defying the original intentions of our ancestors, isn't it? How could I be unaware of all the reasons? A helpless look filled Zhan Mubai's eyes. It is not because I wish to force you and make things difficult. But this matter really needs Brother Chao's help. That descendant of mine has the Xian Yin death meridian in him. In this world, only the specially cultivated warm yang Xian Qi by Brother Chao's sect is able to slowly treat it. And only by becoming Brother Chao's disciple, after the Xian Yin death meridian has been dispelled, then can all that Xian Yin Qi be converted into the purest warm yang Xian Qi, creating an unprecedented Xian Qi talent. If Brother Chao is unwilling to help, then all that Xian Yin Qi in that descendant of mine will have no means of being neutralized. And he will definitely not live past 30. Chao Guofeng held his wine cup and went into deep thoughts before speaking. Brother Zhan, the Zhan family population is in abundance, so there should be a few thousand of you. As the senior of the Zhan family, you should treat everyone the same and view them all equally. But why are you so fixated on this youth? To be willing to lower yourself to make this request of me? Zhan Mubai laughed bitterly. Back when the Zhan family was a mere small family, I was just one of the subsidiaries of the family. I had managed to gain the rightful heir through my efforts. For hundreds of years. Indeed, the Zhan family has been expanding, but the Zhan family that has blood relations with me only has this single child left today. If Brother Chao is really unwilling to lend me your aid this time, I'm afraid that in a few decades, while the rest of the Zhan family continues to have many offsprings, but this one subsidiary under me will really have no descendants anymore. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 856. Free and Natural Physique. So that was the case. Chao Guofeng came to a sudden realization. No one could imagine the fixation people their level and age have towards having their own direct line of descendants. So when Zhan Mubai mentioned it, he also instantly understood. But precisely because he had understood, he felt even more troubled. If he helped this favor, he would go against his ancestral teachings. If he didn't help, he would greatly offend Zhan Mubai. After this descendant passed, he would have made himself a strong enemy without any reason. He may not be afraid, but it would still be a big problem. What should I do? No matter what choice I pick, it will still be wrong. There was benefit to situating themselves in public. Zhan Mubai did not lower his voice when he was talking and simply laid everything out in the open. Everyone present heard it. This left Chao Guofeng with no way to retreat. Jun Moxie and the 14th young master who had coincidentally overheard this conversation also naturally understood. The two exchanged looks, mutually taking delight in Zhan Mubai's misfortune. Who knew this powerful Saint Emperor Zhan Mubai was going to face the crisis of not having any more descendants soon? The warm yang xian skill that our sect passes down is definitely the best for basic cultivation for countering Xian Yin death meridian. Chao Guofeng said with great difficulty. But that is still on the basis accumulated work, and the process of dispelling will take a long time, making progress with each bit of the Xian Yin death meridian before being dispelled. Only then can it be converted to personal Xian Qi through the secret incantations. As to completely converting all the meridians of the body from Xian Yin to warm yang, It will take about 30 years at the very least. And it will be an extremely long process where both master and disciple will need to fork out large amount of efforts. Due to the peculiar nature of our sect's Xian skills, we have only passed our skills down to a single disciple between generations. For hundreds of years till now, I have never accepted any disciples because I was choosing one to inherit my skills. If it was before Brother Zhan had brought up this matter like this today, I may accept it no matter how difficult it is. But Chao Guofeng laughed bitterly without a choice. Let's not even talk about our ancestral teachings. I accidentally discovered someone who has another type of peculiar physique that is the dream disciple of all Xian cultivators. Free and natural physique. And this person is right before me. I cannot help but feel tempted. Free and natural physique? Is it really free and natural physique? Who is it? Where? Not only Zhan Mu paid attention, but all the other Saint Emperor experts couldn't hold back their curiosity and asked. A look of extreme shock upon their faces. Some of them even had a fervent look in their eyes. You couldn't blame them for overreacting. This so-called free and natural physique was truly too rare. It made a natural prodigy for cultivating. Be it their soul, bone structure, muscles, or meridians, they were all in a natural state of being free and natural, completely untainted. And a natural genius like this was too hard to come by. Because no matter what sort of physique this person had innately, the moment they were born, they'd be in this sort of unique state, but over a couple of days, because of food intake and breathing, they will be tainted. This was a fact that no one could escape from. But these Xian cultivating sects could not gather and wait outside every delivery room of woman giving birth. Besides, even if they watch over hundred thousands of women giving birth, they may not necessarily be able to meet a child that was of a free and natural physique. So this had always been a legend. In the 10,000s of years of Xian continent, it seemed like only one had appeared before. This was mentioned in the 9 Nether First Young Master's personal letter that had been passed down, hence there was no doubt. And thus it became a legend that was passed down. If a baby possessing the free and natural physique were really to appear before these Saint Emperor experts right now, they'd probably all be exchanging blows to snatch the rights to him. The 9 Nether First Young Master's letter had clearly stated, as long as it was nurtured according to unique methods, after he had grown, he would be able to level up to a saint within 50 years. A 50-year-old saint. This was a godly miracle. Vestige that belonged to the gods. And this sort of achievement was only the beginning. This person had absolutely no limits in his future. As long as this wonder was given enough space to grow, his achievements would be unprecedented. This was a big affair that brought pride and glory to the ancestors. The number one expert in the whole of history. Whoever who took in a disciple like this would be the master of the number one expert. When that time came, how could a Saint Emperor compare? No one doubted this vague legend that had no proof. Because the 9 Nether First Young Master had admitted in his letter. He himself was a cultivator with a free and natural physique. What sort of achievements did the 9 Nether First Young Master have? He was the unrivaled peak throughout history. The founding ancestor of Xian skills. All the Xian cultivator of Xian continent. The absolute existence that all Xian cultivators from past till now admired. Everyone's breathing got heavy. They all looked intensely at Chao Guofeng. It looked like if Chao Guofeng did not spill it, everyone would attack him already. Chao Guofeng let out a bitter smile, a look of genuine regret on his face. He was careless and accidentally let it slip. He felt the urge to knock himself to death. With great difficulty, he said, Everyone here has their own close disciples. There's no need to fight with me over him. Besides, I am still unable to confirm. It is just a hunch. A hunch? Who is it? Whose child is it? Zhan Mubai's face was extremely red as he breathed heavily. Perhaps others would be embarrassed to fight for it. But for him, all his disciples were surnamed Zhan. So naturally he counted them as his own descendants. Passing of skills within the family didn't count as snatching a disciple. If he had a disciple who was a prodigy with a free and natural physique, having that supreme glory. Something like this could have Zhan Mu by fainting from merely imagining it for a while. If he could really have this glory, then so what if he really had no descendants? Seemingly far away, actually close at hand. This person with the free and natural physique is him. Chao Guofeng was left without a choice under the eyes that looked like they were about to devour him. He understood that if he didn't spill it, he would offend all 7 people. And they would keep tight surveillance on him. So his wishes would also be unable to be accomplished. Left without any other choice, he pointed his finger. Everyone looked in the direction of his hand, their sights landing on an extremely surprised face. Under the scrutiny of everyone, that face instantly crumbled and looked troubled. Chao Guofeng had pointed at young Master Jun. The 14th young master jerked, suddenly breaking out in loud laughter, spitting his tea all over the stupefied Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie had the urge beat this maniacal jerk to death. I am wearing a mask. What is up with you spitting all over me? If my real appearance is exposed cause of this, then aren't I doomed for good? He hurriedly carefully dried himself. This really frightened him. Even if the mask did not fall off, it would be game over even if I accidentally wrinkled the skin when drying off. Fortunately, this did not happen, although the current situation was a little dramatic. But luck would never follow one person for too long, and an even more dramatic scene occurred. The next instance, 8 men instantly stretched their hands over. Young Master Jun had yet to have any reaction, and his entire body was captured by those Saint Emperors and placed on the table, carefully scrutinized. Observing young Master Jun's body with a fervent and intense look in their eyes. Thank goodness there were clothes covering him. Or if not, what would it become? Chao Guofeng was extremely happy and surprised. He had never imagined that randomly coming to meet Zhan Mubai, just by randomly joining someone's conversation to change the topic, he had discovered a treasure. It was simply too lucky. The 2 who were conversing, that youth in white, was of the legendary free and natural physique. Chao Guofeng had barely believed his eyes earlier, but after carefully taking a few looks, he finally confirmed. It really is. Oh my God. It's real. Chao Guofeng at this moment was barely away from having a stroke. Heavens! Earth! Which fairy deity did such a good thing? To let such a wonder appear right before my eyes. Thank goodness I refused to accept any disciples all these years. Otherwise, I can only pass down to one person from each generation. Hey, so what if I had accepted a disciple? I can just chase the one I accepted earlier out and accept this one before me. Even if there is great price to pay, it'll be worth it. So since he had found out this super prodigy, Chao Guofeng's brain was clearly not enough for use anymore. His speech barely matched the conversation, only focusing on how could he secretly bring him back without anyone suspecting. There were numerous despicable people who were easily jealous in this world. Even if it were himself, seeing someone else take in a disciple like this, he'd probably be extremely jealous. But because his thoughts were wandering, he finally let it slip. Chao Guofeng did not give any consideration when Zhan Mubai brought up the physique of his descendant. He was just trying to reject it, but because of a moment of folly, he accidentally let the words, free and natural physique, slipped. At that instant, Chao Guofeng had the urge to kill himself. What did I say just now? I accidentally let that secret out. I deserve to die. How great would it be if I had secretly accepted this disciple, bringing him back to nurture him? The misty illusory manner has no relations with the mundane world, and there is so much room for growing in there. And by the time I die of old age, this disciple would more or less be invincible already. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 857. Exceptional Talent. Chao Guofeng was still rather confident in his life expectancy. He believed that with the cultivation level of a third-level Saint Emperor, there was no problem with living for another 300 years. And someone with a free and natural physique could become a saint by the age of 50. Then, 300 years? He will be stronger than me then, no matter what. And across the entire world, how many people dare say that they are stronger than me? Less than 5. But he had accidentally let it slip when his mind was preoccupied and feeling perturbed. Now there was no chance of hiding it. Right now, how could he even feel a little apologetic to Zhan Mubai? Chao Guofeng was so frustrated he felt like killing Zhan Mubai in one strike. You dare to dream of asking me to take in your grandson of God knows how many generations as my disciple? Keep dreaming. Is that descendant of yours with the Xian-Yin death meridian such a big deal? He is doomed to die. So why won't he die yet? The earlier he dies, the lesser burden he becomes to everyone. Zhan Mubai, you goddamn old bastard. You. It is you who ruined everything for me. Heavens curse you to have no descendants. Chao Guofeng was so agitated he had the urge to go on a rampage. But he still needed to maintain a good image before his future disciple, forcing himself to put on a kind and carefree image, although he was feeling extremely upset internally. Oh my God! It really is the legendary free and natural physique. One Saint Emperor shrieked in surprise. His tone simply sounded like a young girl who suddenly saw her idol, like a Buddhist follower suddenly seeing Buddha in real life. The table was already clean, and only young Master Jun sat upon it like a plate of dish. His eyes dull and a face full of helplessness. There were 8 Saint Emperors, 16 shining bright eyes scanning his body, from top to toe. Even if a great beauty were standing stark naked in this crowd, she may not be able to make these 8 Saint Emperors reveal such a focused and engrossed expression and look in their eyes. How extraordinary young Master Jun's supreme charm was. Although he was still fully clothed, but Jun Moxie had a disgusting feeling as if he had been stripped bare naked. He felt like crying. I'm being thoroughly scanned by 8 old demons who have lived for God knows how long. Why is my life so bitter? Right now, he suddenly understood the same feeling of being provoked to the point of explosion, but being unable to do anything about that he had brought upon 9 nether 14 young master earlier. Truly instant retribution. It was not that retribution wasn't coming, it just wasn't time yet. When the time was here, what will happen instantly? And in such a shocking and embarrassing manner. Help! Who knew that simply coming out for a meal would cause such huge trouble? These are 8 Saint Emperors right before me, all the peak experts of the world. Assessing like me, they are assessing the quality of meat. The look in their eyes is undisguised greed. The feck. Are you treating this young master as longevity meet one? Actually, these people were all mistaken. Jun Xie was definitely not of some free and natural physique. This body, before Jun Xie had taken over, was complete garbage. It had no natural aptitudes to speak of at all. The free and natural physique was indeed extremely rare. From ancient times till now, it seemed like the nine nether first young master was the only person with it. But these people did not know that although Jun Xie's physique was not the free and natural physique, but it was much more rare than the free and natural physique. Who was capable of using the purest heaven and earth spiritual qi to cleanse his body? And frequently in a day. Who was capable of undergoing transformations every day? Changing every hour? And who was capable of using the number one art in all of history and the world to cultivate? Who was able to perpetually use the number one treasure in the world, the Hongjun Pagoda, to aid himself? And the most shocking, who was capable of owning an endless supply of primal chaos purple qi? This was a heaven-defying thing that even immortals could only pine for. Under such a long period of such nourishment, Jun Xie's body can no longer be described as natural endowments. The current him was indeed and truly even more valuable than longevity meat. Jun Xie had always concealed his body condition very well. But he didn't know if it was bad luck or his poor karma. He was provoking the nine nether 14 young master without restraints. And because of this, he entered a state of enlightenment, causing his state of mind to be greatly different before enlightenment. But this had caused a slight fluctuation. Just as he had finished his enlightenment, Zhan Mubai came in with Chao Guofeng and the rest. Had it been any other saint emperor, they would probably brush past him, dismissing him as a small prodigy of the mundane world. But the person who came was Chao Guofeng. Chao Guofeng's sect focused on changing Xian Qi in their cultivation. And they had always only passed their cultivation methods to a sole disciple from generation to generation. Chao Guofeng was hundreds of years old, but he had never found someone whom he deemed suitable to be his disciple. This Saint Emperor Chao was looking at all the so-called prodigies like a hungry wolf. Chao Guofeng himself was blessed with superior natural endowments. Otherwise, he wouldn't be capable of cultivating to the supreme realm of a Saint Emperor. But he was still not any of those few types of unique natural physiques. Chao Guofeng had already reached his limit in attaining the cultivation of a Saint Emperor. He was probably incapable of breaking past it for the rest of his life. But he was still a few levels lower than his master. And this was the greatest regret in his life. So Chao Guofeng once swore that no matter what, he must find the disciple with absolute natural endowments that could surpass all of his ancestors. Coming to Tongguan Hall by chance today was truly a case of rain coming across an area of prolonged drought. To think that he could come across the natural and free physique that only existed in legends. Chao Guofeng was naturally full of jealousy. His blood was also starting to boil. The current Saint Emperor Chao had already made his decision. No matter what, I must make him my disciple. Even if I have to fall out with all these old friends of hundreds of years, or even turn them into enemies, I don't care. And there were at least 3 other Saint Emperors who had the same idea as Chao Guofeng. And one of them was Zhan Mubai, the Saint Emperor Bai who had dealt a sneak attack on Jun Xie. But Zhan Mubai was destined to not have any chance at this. Because for the sake of convincing Chao Guofeng of the misty illusory manner to accept his descendant as his disciple, he had came alone today. As long Chao Guofeng agreed, Zhan Mubai had prepared lavish gifts for the other 6 people as well. Not for the sake of bribing them to keep hush about the matter, but just to ensure that his great-great-great-grandson could receive the best care and benefits in the illusory manner. But in a great situation where pies fell from the sky like this now, Zhan Mubai was all on his own. The other party had 7 people, 7 saint emperors, and they were all from the misty illusory manor. He was well aware of the differences in strength. Young Master Jun was about to use his yin-yang escape art to flee from the 8 saint emperors, but a peculiar thought bubbled in his heart. And it was this thought that stopped Jun Moxie in his tracks. Jun Moxie recalled something Mei Shuayan had mentioned in the past. There's a 7-colored tree within the misty illusory manor. The 7-colored tree produces a kind of 7-colored fruit, called the 7-colored holy fruit. And in the heaven saint palace of the 3 holy lands, there's a sacred lotus pond. Within it, there's a stalk of 9-segment exquisite lotus. Consuming 1 7-colored holy fruit and the petal of the 9-segment exquisite lotus together will increase a person's cultivation by 500 years and retain the appearance of the person for 500 years. Guan Qinghan, Dugu Xiao Yi, and his mother. This matter had always been on Jun Moxie's mind. He had never forgotten about it. But the misty illusory manor has always been extremely secretive, and he had no idea how to even go in. What more think about stealing the 7-colored holy tree? Perhaps the situation today is an opportunity. It is up me to use it. But no matter what, this path must not be cut off completely yet. Jun Moxie was anxiously making his considerations, temporarily forgetting the awkwardness of being surrounded like an exhibit. Lad, what is your name? How old are you? Who is your master? Who do you learn from? Where is your home? Who else is there in your family? You. Countless questions came from the 8 saint emperors at the same time, causing Jun Moxie to be at a loss as to what to do. He had no idea whose question to answer first. After great difficulty in answering all these interrogations, he heaved a sigh of relief. For the sake of his future plans, Jun Moxie's white lies left these 8 saint emperors extremely pleased. An orphan, all alone this world from young. His master was a jade Xian warrior whom he was mutually dependent on. As to the profound question of how he could maintain his free and natural physique after growing so big, Jun Moxie gave a similar odd look and said, "It is said that I grew up in the tiger's den when I saw younger. I do not know of anything else." Question: Have you ever eaten anything? Answer: When I was young, I came across this white stone that had suddenly broken, and there was water inside. So I drank it. But they said that I was unconscious for a few days before I woke up again. And thus, all the saint emperors came to a realization. 16 brightly lit eyes looked at Jun Moxie as they exclaimed, "No wonder." So it was the legendary spirit stone immortal milk. It may even have been a high-quality spirit stone immortal milk of a few billion years. If that were the case, then everything could be explained. And so all of them looked at Jun Moxie with even greater passion in their eyes. It truly is a miracle. A free and natural physique was already so rare it was considered a legend. And this youth with the free and natural physique had even once drank something equally legendary, spirit stone immortal milk. This youth only needed to get a great master, and his future achievements would simply be, indescribable. All the 8 saint emperors' eyes were full of desire. The 8 saint emperors were cursing and wearing simultaneously in their hearts at the original Jade Xian master of this prodigy. What sort of poor standard? What a waste of talent! Having a disciple who was the only one in all of history to have this physique, teaching him for a few years, but he was only at the level of a silver Xian. The inadequacy of this master was unacceptable. How could you waste such an excellent material? Luckily, that scoundrel had yet to spoil anything else. Otherwise, if he had really ruined that natural physique, These 8 saint emperors would definitely execute that master's family 100 times over. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 858. Vi. It seemed that as long as it was young Master Jun Master, they'd all become the arch nemesis of the Saint Emperor experts. Be it before or right now. What a tragedy. Jun Moxie looked over to the table he was at through the crowd of people, and just as he expected, that scoundrel 9 nether 14 young master had already vanished without a trace. That jerk has no spirit of brotherhood, just minding his own escape even after seeing me in such a terrible situation. You lot have really ruined my plans. Young Master Jun felt like crying. He had finally bumped into the 9 nether 14 young master after great difficulty. This person was currently the number 1 strongest assistant to Jun Moxie. During their conversation, Jun Moxie had already noticed a peculiar sign. No matter where the 9 nether 14 young master went, the surrounding heaven-earth spiritual chi always automatically gathered towards his body. In other words, even if this guy did not exercise his skills, he was still in a state of recuperating at any moment. Jun Moxie reckoned that although this guy was severely injured previously, but he was more or less recovered right now. Although it may be a little difficult to take action now, but in a couple of days, it should not be an issue anymore. With that sort of horrifying speed of recovery, those injuries were definitely no big issue to him. The injuries that the 9 nether 14th young master had sustained in the battle in Tien Fa Forest was so terrifying that one could be scared to death simply by looking at them. 2 swords pierced through his chest alone, at the position of his heart. The 3rd sword had simply skewered all his intestines and his stomach. And this was putting aside all the other numerous injuries he had sustained. Had this befallen any random person, he would have been reincarnated by now. But this person was still alive and kicking, and even making a long way over as a feverish musical enthusiast. Calculating in this way, this fellow should be capable of utilizing significant battle prowess in a couple of days more. When that time comes, if this young master cannot deal with all the enemies, wouldn't it be invigorating if I just make him the scapegoat? Chu Chi Hun used to the scapegoat. Isn't it great to have a change now? This was Jun Moxie's grand scheme. But this perfect plan was obviously already foiled, or at the very least, not usable in the short term. Leaving whether he was able to get out of this aside, even if he was able to, it was also an impossible task for him to find the 9 nether 14 young master in a huge place like Chrysanthemum City. Unless he takes the initiative to come and find me. This was utterly bad luck. Looking at these 8 saint emperors who were all agitated, Jun Moxie felt all the anger rushing to his head. Alright. Since you guys decided to treat the god of death as longevity meat, then I shall let you guys have a good surprise. Finally, the 8 saint emperors also realized that it was rather unbecoming to put Jun Moxie on the table, so they picked him up and sat him down on a chair. Then 8 of them also settled back into their seats, facing each other. Finally, I say, lad, I think that your aptitude isn't bad. Are you willing to make me your master? I am the ancestor of the Zhan family, and Saint Emperor expert in the pugilistic world. And as long as you follow me, you can have whatever you want and enjoy endless fame and fortune. After an awkward period, it was Zhan Mubai who was the most thick-skinned, opening his mouth first to take advantage of being first. It wouldn't do if he was not anxious about it. The other 7 were all his opponents, but how could he, one person, vie with the 7 of them? The lad is still part of the secular world. Who knows? He may be swayed by fame and fortune, and it is worth a try. As long as the little fellow nods his head, I can just pick him up and go and not care about anything else. But Zhan Mubai had barely finished his words when he got interrupted. What, as long as he follows you? And, fame and fortune? I say, old Zhan, why do you sound like you are looking for a concubine? How can objects of the secular world be worthy in the eyes of people like us? Lad, don't listen to him. This old fox is lecherous, despicable, and the #1 shameless person. I'm better. I was known as the holy sword scholar in the past, and my reputation was far and wide. I am full of justice and my xian skills are powerful. The one speaking was the Saint Emperor surnamed Bai. He was still addressing Zhan Mubai as Brother Zhan earlier. But now that there was a conflict of interests, his tone instantly switched and Zhan Mubai had become lecherous, despicable, and the #1 shameless person in his mouth. This change in role was really extremely fast. The more drastic the change in attitude, the more arbitrary the speech became. There was no other reason. It was just that the natural endowments of this youth before them was really at a heaven-defying state. Although he was only of a silver xian cultivation right now, but the meridians in his body were crystal clear, with no obstructions at all. This also went to say that no matter what type, or what level of xian skills he cultivated, there was absolutely no bottleneck for him. Which martial arts practitioner had no bottleneck? Although the 8 present were all Saint Emperors, but their cultivations were the substantial accumulation of a few hundred years. And in their long duration of cultivating for hundreds of years, at least 2/3 of the time was used for breaking through layers of bottlenecks. No bottleneck. What sort of monster must that be? No one dared to imagine it. Although the 9 Nether First Young Master had left written proof and no one had ever doubted its legitimacy, but because it was something that had never been seen over 10,000s of years, everyone had treated it as a beautiful legend. But right now, the legend had came true. There was this superhuman monster right before their eyes. With this sort of heaven-defying natural endowments, he could smoothly advance easily to the level of a Saint Emperor by mere accumulation alone. An innate talent that went beyond the limits of the world may not be unheard of, but since the 10,000 years after the 9 Nether First Young Master, there was only him alone. And it may not necessarily appear again in the future. This was definitely something that was absolutely hard to come by. All 8 old men got agitated at the same time, their greedy looks locked onto Jun Moxie. Since when were young Master Jun's guts ever small? Describing him as extremely daring was perfect. But today, right now, he was truly trembling in his guts. He really felt a little afraid. To be honest, anyone else would also be afraid. One young man being surrounded by 8 old demons that were a few hundred years old, all of them looking at him full of desire, anticipation, and greed in their eyes, which showed no intentions of letting him go. Who could be unafraid? After long banter, everyone was stuck in a stalemate, but no one was also willing to let go. Only a fool would be willing to let go of a talent like this. Enough. Making a racket like this. What a scandal. What sort of position are we all at? We are all so old already. There is no reason to snatch a disciple. Trust you guys to be capable of doing something this distasteful. We're just letting the juniors see us embarrass ourselves. Chao Guofeng frowned and said, which one of you aren't with a whole lot of disciples and grand disciples? I'm still without any disciples till now. And you guys are not embarrassed to be fighting with me. I believe that only I am capable of focusing solely on nurturing this child. And let him develop his fullest. Everyone rolled their eyes simultaneously. If this was just any regular or the few types of prodigal physique, I also wouldn't fight with you. But this is the free and natural physique. Who wouldn't desire it? Saying that we are not behaving in a becoming manner, but as if you are not doing the same. Only you can solely focus on nurturing him. This is bullshit. If it's a disciple like this, who would not be focused on nurturing him? Even if we have to discharge all our past disciples, it will all be worth it. Brother Chao speaks logically. This sort of prodigy indeed requires concentrated teaching. It is just that although Brother Chao may have no disciples, he has high positions and duties in the illusory manner. Unlike me, who is an idle person. Haha. I also do not have a suitable disciple to impart my skills to. Zhan Moxie laughed chuckled. Brother Chao, let me have this one. With Brother Chao's capabilities, I'm sure you are capable of finding even better ones in the future. Actually, that descendant of mine is not too shabby either. Born with the Xian Yin Death Meridian, perfectly suitable for Brother Chao's unique teachings. You see. Chao Guofeng rolled his eyes and immediately cut him off. Even better ones? Zhan Moxie, you don't even have to find me one. If you can mention a better physique than the free and natural physique, I will immediately let you have him. But you sure have made your sweet plans. Not only do you intend to usurp this child, you still want me to put effort into your sickly great-grandson. How did you plot it? All the good things belongs to you now? Zhan Moxie was embarrassed. Brother Chao, are you really this unreasonable? Forget it. It's fine if you don't take my descendant as your disciple. I won't force you to do it. But today, you even want to fight with me over a disciple? Brother Chao, one has to be reasonable as a human. You can't not only let me not only have any more descendants and also not have any disciple to impart my skills to. Chao Guofeng was on the verge of fainting. He gritted his teeth and said, Zhan Moxie, to think that you are capable of saying something this shameless. How am I being unreasonable? The physique of that descendant of yours wasn't decided by me. If you want to find fault, you should look for his parents. If I'm willing to accept him as my disciple, it is because I am doing you a favor. If I'm unwilling, it is because of fairness. This is the true reason. Leaving everything else aside. Out of all the 1,000 people in your Zhan family, which one of them is not your disciple? Today, the disciple that I sought for 700 over years. And you dare to say that he is yours? You. Do you still have shame? Who is the one being unreasonable? Let everyone here be the judge of it. Had it been any regular person, I wouldn't vie for him. But this lad's physique is not inferior to that demonic existence. Jun Moxie. I definitely will not let go of a talent like this no matter what. Don't tell me that Brother Chao is going to rely on the fact that everyone present is an expert from your illusory manner and force me to give up taking this disciple. Zhan Moxie had straightaway began to act shamelessly. Not only did he directly insult the illusory manner's intentions as wanting to bully him with the advantage of numbers, he had straightaway made young Master Jun his disciple. This change in identity was truly of godly speed. Chao Guofeng was shocked. Don't tell me that that demon Jun Moxie was also of a free and natural physique. We did not have the time to check carefully what sort of physique that Jun Moxie was. But Jun Moxie had indeed attained the second level of a venerable before the age of 18. This was a fact that many of us bore witness to. Brother Chao, even if he had the guidance of a great master, this sort of advancement speed. What sort of physique did you think he was? Zhan Moxie scoffed and added. And this lad here, although he is also of a mere 18 or 19 years of age, but he is still as a piece of jade that had yet to be carved. He only lacked the guidance of a master. If he had undergone careful teaching, he may not necessarily be inferior to Jun Moxie, or perhaps even stronger. I have the confidence that perhaps that this child is the second nine nether first young master. You have this confidence. But do I not have it? The scramble for power and profit by the three holy lands has already caused so much chaos in the regular world. If this child is really given to you, he will definitely be destroyed. Absolute. Why no way? You can keep talking. But there is no room for negotiation. Chao Guofeng had made up his mind that he would not let go of this disciple no matter what. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 859. The plot underway. Jun Moxie was already dead. No matter how good his physique was, it was a thing of the past now. And this lad right here had no opponents in this world in terms of his physique. How could Chao Guofeng let a talent like this slip past his hands? This was the future #1 expert. Chao Guofeng. You are really too much. On what basis are you accusing me of destroying talent? Zhan Moxie had an infuriated look. Today, you must give me an explanation. He had already made up his mind. He couldn't be bothered anymore. He only needed to find the right opportunity to grab the youth and go. If we have to fall out, then so be it. As long as I can get this heaven-defying lad in my hands, anything is worth it. He was willing to give up on the elusive world of immortals and even the whole Zhan family. He'd find a secret place and hole up inside, focusing wholeheartedly on nurturing this disciple. This concerned a glory that lasted for ages, and any sort of sacrifice would be worthwhile. Although the other 6 people also had the same inclinations, Chao Guofeng was still ultimately the leader of this operation for the misty illusory manor, so they could not necessarily insist on vying for the boy. So all in all, only Chao Guofeng and himself were the ones vying for this disciple. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Excuse me, all the elders here. Could you allow this junior to say something? A meek voice came from the side. It was young Master Jun. While the 8 of them were arguing here, young Master Jun's mind had been thinking, not stopping for a moment. But he was pondering over how to utilize such an awkward situation or even gain an advantage out of it. Speak. Chao Guofeng and Zhan Moxie said simultaneously, but they were just trying to achieve a good image in the eyes of their future disciple. My master once seriously warned me that to choose a master, first and foremost, that person must have shocking prowess. Why must both seniors be caught in this wrangle? I'm right here. It's not like I can run away, and I'll end up under either one of you. Since I need to make someone my master, naturally I'll pick one who is more powerful. Why don't the 2 of you exchange a few strokes on the spot? Who is stronger than the other will be obvious, and the defeated party will also have nothing else to say, right? Jun Moxie stammered, cowering as he spoke. Both of them were convinced upon hearing Jun Moxie's words. His words did make sense. No matter how much the loser had to offer, it was all useless if he lost this fight. The 2 exchanged looks and saw the determination to win in each other's eyes. That's right. That's right. The winner is king. The winner decides it all. If you are willing to take the gamble, you'd be willing to pay the price. It is indeed a good solution to resolving this argument. All the other 6 people began to egg the fight on. They naturally had full confidence in Chao Guofeng. Chao Guofeng was a 3rd-level Saint Emperor. Although Zhan Moxie was not ordinary, but he was only a 2nd-level Saint Emperor. This was a huge distinction. The outcome of this battle determined who the disciple would belong to. This was the equivalent of allowing Chao Guofeng to hold an invincible position. Beads of perspiration began to form on Zhan Moxie's face. He gritted his teeth and held back that, "Fine. A fight it is," that was in his throat. If they really began to start this battle, he was determined to lose. And the relationship between three holy lands and Chao Guofeng as well as the rest would also be destroyed because of this. Perhaps there is no need to rush for this matter. Brother Chao. There is still some time before you have to return to the illusory manor. Why don't we test this lad's receptivity during this period of time as a form of serious consideration? If this lad only has the physique but not the corresponding perception, then wouldn't we have argued for nothing? As to who shall keep the disciple, we can discuss this matter afterwards. How is that? Zhan Mubai was extremely willy, churning out something that was reasonable. That's all right too. Chao Guofeng also understood that now was not a good time to fall out with Zhan Mubai. If there was no room for saving the situation, he would have already begun exchanging blows. But Zhan Mubai had relented first. If he insisted, then he was the one being unreasonable. So he agreed reluctantly. But he also realized that after Zhan Mubai returned, he would definitely contact the other saint emperors of the three holy lands to come forth and put greater pressure on himself. It would be difficult for him to achieve anything without support. And the longer this matter dragged out, the more the situation would turn unfavorable. But within a few thoughts, he had already found a solution. He turned around and looked at the other 6 saint emperors present with him and solemnly said, "My 6 brothers. We all came upon this great talent together. If I'm the only one who takes possession of this enormous advantage, I will also sincerely feel bad, knowing how you guys fancy this lad. How about this? If I have the opportunity to make this child my disciple, then aside from being my successor, he will also have to treat the 6 of you as his masters. In other words, this child shall be the disciple of all 7 of us combined. What do the 6 of you think of this?" Not only did he occupy the position of the main leader, he had also given all 6 of them a favor, obtaining numerous gains from this speech alone. And he was confident that all 6 of them would not refuse. You must be kidding. This concerns becoming the master of the future #1 expert in the world. Even if it was just in title, it is still a grand achievement and glory. As expected, all 6 people expected to back off, seeing that a fight was about to break out, and had all decided to view this matter as something that no longer concerned themselves. But now Chao Guofeng had unexpectedly given them this sort of favor, so their attitudes changed again and they were extremely elated. "Brother Chao, do you really mean what you say?" "How could I not really mean it at this point in time? Did you think I'm really willing to share this great disciple equally?" Chao Guofeng laughed bitterly and continued. "With the current situation, if we do not join forces, this disciple will be snatched away by the 3 holy lands. This place is still ultimately their turf. If they really succeed, then in 1 to 200 years later, the misty illusory manor will no longer be able to keep our position. Be it for the sake of passing on our legacy for illusory manor, the 7 of us must escort this prodigal son back to misty illusory manor. Although I have the intentions to monopolize him, but I am still a part of illusory manor, so I must do my best for the future of the misty illusory manor." He paused for a while. "I have no regrets in saying this. Since I've said that he shall be the disciple of the 7 of us, then there shall be no change to this fact from now onwards. My only request is that in terms of status, he is still my successor. I only have this request and I hope you will allow this." His sincerity was obvious through his words. And the other 6 people instantly felt a little guilty for forgetting the bigger picture. Although this disciple would have the status of Chao Guofeng's successor, but he would also be the disciple of all 6 of them. This was so much better compared to the situation before, where they could only look on with desire and not have a single share over him. They all agreed synchronously. There is absolutely no problem with Brother Chao's request. You can rest assured. Since he is the shared disciple between the three of us, then even if the three Holy Lands want to try and snatch him away, the few of us are no pushovers. Zhan Mubai cried from anguish internally. This was a beautiful move by Chao Guofeng. Now he had 6 more extremely powerful supporters. This raised the difficulty of Zhan Mubai's plans by numerous folds. Even if any one of the 3 Holy Lands brought out their full forces, they might not be able to stand up against a force like this. But Zhan Mubai was not going to let go just like this. The misty illusory manor was fearful that the 3 Holy Lands would use this child to oppress them a few hundred years later. So he hoped that he could use this child to free the 3 Holy Lands from the shadows of the misty illusory manor. Free and natural physique. The physique of the 9 Nether First Young Master. The achievements of 9 Nether First Young Master back then. Zhan Mubai's agitated chest was about to explode just by thinking of this. He would not let go no matter what. The discussion had been set, so these few old men didn't even bother eating, simply making payment and heading back to the Chen Manor. Jun Moxie was escorted in the middle of the 7 Saint Emperors from the misty illusory manor, completely revolving around him. Saint Emperor opening the path, Saint Emperor guarding from the back, and Saint Emperor bodyguards on life and right. The extent of the pampering that young Master Jun was receiving currently would leave the 9 Nether First Young Master from 10,000 years ago exclaiming in awe. Unbeknown to Jun Moxie, these 8 Saint Emperors, including Zhan Mubai, were also secretly observing him. Despite the lad being surrounded by the aura of these 8 experts. Although he had no idea what was happening, but his expression remained untroubled and he wasn't flustered in his behavior as well, maintaining a calm and reserved disposition. Truly extraordinary. No wonder it is the free and natural physique. The 8 Saint Emperors' appraisal of young Master Jun had risen again. The aura of 8 Saint Emperors could easily make 10,000s of Xian beasts shun away even if it is in the Tian Fa forest. How powerful was that? Although they did not intentionally release any malice or oppressing aura. But it was not something that any regular person could bear. These 8 people returned to the Chen Manor, each with their own ulterior motives. Jun Moxie and this fake, super longevity meat was settled into the room right in the center of all the other rooms in a small courtyard that the Chen family had specially prepared for the Saint Emperors from the misty illusory manor. And Chao Guofeng was staying right next door. Chao Guofeng clearly could not wait to make Jun Moxie his disciple and impart him some skills. But seeing that hint of hesitation in his mind that Jun Moxie had portrayed, although he had forced himself to be calm and steady, he still couldn't conceal that tinge of helplessness. Chao Guofeng couldn't help but feel some tender affection in his heart. Sigh. He is still a member of the secular world and is too young. He hasn't seen much of the world yet and is still lacking in experience. He has gotten a little dizzy from the glamour of the Chen Manor. We'll need to let him adjust to things properly first. Tomorrow, I'll have the Chen family members to come over to pay their greetings. First, to reaffirm him of my supreme status. And second, to eradicate the anxiety and fear in his heart. He is the future disciple of the 7 of us. How could a mere Chen family stand for anything? Letting them host us is already giving them a lot of face. He wanted to carefully comfort young Master Jun and treat him affably, making sure Jun Moxie was feeling extremely comfortable. He even used his skills to create a special atmosphere that would help Jun Moxie calm his panicked state of mind. When everything was over and Jun Moxie's emotions were clearly more at ease, these 7 great Saint Emperors then returned to their room to practice. At their level, not sleeping was simply small matter. Besides, These 7 people's hearts were even more agitated than Jun Moxie's. But they did not realize that right after their departure, a cunning and scheming look flashed in the eyes of this prospective disciple. This was the perfect opportunity to sow discord. If this prospective disciple of theirs suddenly died, what would happen? Jun Moxie was full of anticipation. On the surface, these 7 saint emperors had returned to their respective rooms to meditate. But they had already secretly started a group conversation using the voice transference technique, the 7 of them getting more excited as they talked. They had even started discussing how to help this precious disciple of theirs build up his foundation when they returned back to the illusory manor. Which type of rare medicines to use first? Building the foundations. Order to in teaching him by the unique points of each of their skills. Who would follow to add on, enhance and strengthen further? Until a certain stage. Then what other method to use to level it up more? They had even discussed using the 7-color sacred fruit in the misty illusory manner during a certain point in his training to cleanse his meridians. To create an invincible and unrivaled expert within the shortest period of time. The higher the cultivation level of the disciple, the earlier he graduated from his master, and the greater the glory for the master. They believed that with this disciple, there would be no possible problem if the misty illusory manor wanted to completely oppress the 3 holy lands. It was not excessive to think that he would even surpass their elders and ancestors. The real goal would be working hard in the direction of the 9 nether first young masters level, which was not something completely impossible. The 7 of them were in high spirits as they discussed, and each of them had drawn out a blueprint for their grand plan. They all couldn't help but feel extremely excited thinking about the future glory to come. In the pugilistic world, a youth with good physique would still need affinity to be accepted under a good master. But it was a difficult task if a top expert wished to accept a disciple who completely satisfied his requirements. Perhaps these few saint emperors were unaware and had no way to confirm if there was anyone with the free and natural physique in this world and how many were there. But Jun Moxie knew that the 9 nether first young master was definitely not the only one with the free and natural physique in 10,000 years. How many talents had been buried in history? No one was truly sure of it. But if they were to really be added up altogether, they may possibly form an army of 1,000,000 men. How many talents did not have the right opportunities, turning into farmers, businessmen, and even died in poverty? Talents were hard to find, but how many people were aware of their presence? The greatest meaning to both of them was that they cannot be without the other. Time crept silently past. There were no stars or moon in the sky. It was the darkest period before dawn broke in half an hour. The darkness before dawn, the time before the first rays of light shines, the darkest period. At the moment, Chao Guofeng and the rest all noticed something unusual. Although these 7 were merely exchanging conversations secretly, all of them were extremely uptight. That was the legendary, free and natural physique. Zhan Mubai drooled at the sight of it. And now that he had suffered such a great disadvantage, how could he take it lying down? It was hard to promise that he wouldn't try something funny. So as these 7 people were talking, they kept their guard up. The night was just about to pass. And daybreak was about come. Everyone was just about to heave a sigh of relief. But just at this timing, something was off. There was a subtle drifting sound of the wind. Even if someone was listening closely, they'd just brush it off as the sound of wind blowing past. But in this night, the 7 of them were extremely familiar and clear of the sound of the surroundings outside. This seemingly natural sound of wind blew past was a stark contrast, and it was already in the courtyard. The movement was really fast. Had it been any ordinary person, how could they get past the senses of the Saint Emperor experts? They'd be discovered the moment they were hundreds zanks away. not even when they were near the courtyard. This person's cultivation was definitely not beneath any single one of the 7 of them. Zhan Moxie. You old thing really came. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 860. Zhan Moxie. The two of us cannot exist together. Although they had always refused to believe that Zhan Moxie would really do something this despicable with his status as a Saint Emperor, they did not take any chances and let their guard down. But right now, seeing that such a thing was happening right now, the 7 of them simultaneously felt an extreme anger rising in their hearts. Zhan Moxie, you really think too highly of yourself. All 7 men instantly got up, rushing out of their rooms. They only saw an extremely agile black figure breaking out of the back window of the room Jun Moxie was staying in, carrying something in his hand. With a leap, he had already landed on the outer walls that were a couple of meters away. It was still done silently, but all the actions were seen by the eyes of these 7 people. This person's stature and actions were brimming with confidence, ease, and elegance. This was the trademark of Zhan Moxie. With a bam, one Saint Emperor came rushing out from Jun Moxie's room, hollering before he was seen. Boss Chow. Bad news. The boy is missing. Brother Zhan. Are you really this anxious? Chow Guofeng was exploding with anger. Zhan Moxie. Your methods are a little too despicable. We all agreed on fair competition, but you came in the middle of the night to kidnap the lad. Although he was chuckling as he said this sentence, his tone was full of coldness. Clearly he was extremely infuriated. That human figure seemed to pause for a while, not turning around and not even bothering with what Chow Guofeng said. Seeing that he had been exposed, he suddenly shot off from the wall like an arrow. This leap was done with his full force, and he no longer tried to hide his tracks due to the fast speed of his body. The violent friction between the body and the air created a whoosh sound. And at the same time, faint white smoke could be seen rising from the sides of his black clothing, carrying a charred scent. That agility was so terrifyingly fast that it had caused smoke from the friction with air alone. Like a black meteor, a black lightning bolt, disappearing from the top of the wall in a flash. Zhan Moxie. You are really despicable. Chow Guofeng was so angry that his entire body was beginning to shake uncontrollably. To think that Zhan Moxie is capable of something as embarrassing as kidnapping someone and fleeing when he was discovered by us. He really is too shameless. We were really too careless. This person did not care about his reputation and viciously sneak attacked a junior, the public enemy of the 3 Holy Lands, Jun Moxie, during a conversation. That behavior alone was already extremely despicable and shameless. We still wanted to face him off with fairness. We really brought this upon ourselves. With a whistle, 7 furious Saint Emperors gave chase at full speed. They all grinded their teeth and rubbed their fists and palms. We have been away from the pugilistic world for so many years. Are the 3 Holy Lands capable of being this arrogant now? To even dare to snatch a person the misty illusory manner had set their mind on. And to snatch in such an arrogant, unbridled manner. If this is tolerated, then what cannot be tolerated? Feck you. If we don't teach you a lesson, you wouldn't know who's boss. The person ahead was fleeing at high speed, turning and changing direction, hoping to shake off those on his trail. But Chow Guofeng and the rest were relentless in their pursuit. That person in front may have had the upper hand in having a head start, but he was still incapable of shaking them off. The 7 Saint Emperors looked like they were about to catch up. He suddenly laughed in a hoarse voice and said, Since you are so unwilling to part, then I should just return him to you then. That person suddenly halted, lifting the person in his left hand and raising his right palm. Letting out a sharp cry, he struck down hard on that person's head. No! Chao Guofeng felt his heart crumble, and the corners of his eyes were about to split from glaring. He only felt cold all over, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Everything happening seemed to have gone in slow motion in Chao Guofeng's eyes, that palm slowly descending, the crisp sound of paw, and that head in his hand shattering into smithereens like a rotten watermelon, the bloody innards flying across the pitch-black skies. Then, that black figure released his grip. The body fell down like a pillar. Then, he gave it a kick, and that lifeless body fell towards Chao Guofeng, his limbs flailing, and he landed on the ground with a bam. There was no longer any need to investigate anymore. The entire skull had been smashed into mush under this hit. Even if it were 9 nether 14 young master who was struck, he would still not be able to survive from an injury like this. What more a youth who was only a silver xian? All the 7 people who were flying in the air were dumbstruck, almost falling from midair. Looking at that bloody corpse on the ground, they all felt like they were in a nightmare. They had never expected Zhan Mubai to deal such a fatal blow. Ah! Chao Guofeng cried at the sky in a thunderous voice. Both his eyes turned red instantly, and he spat out a whole mouthful of blood in the air. That person in black seemed taken aback, speaking in a hoarse voice. I already said I'm returning him to you, but you don't want it? Why didn't you catch him? Look, now he has fallen to his death. You can't blame me now. It is really the will of the heavens. Although I can't get the lad. You guys can't either. So we can all go our own ways and have nothing else to wrangle over. Chao Guofeng landed on the ground, hunching over and breathing heavily. His eyes glared angrily at the person in black, hatred in his eyes. Zhan Mubai. That person in black continued to speak. I'm afraid you've misrecognized me. I'm Jun Moxie. How could I be Zhan Mubai? Jun Moxie is already dead. And you were the one who killed him. Chao Guofeng was so enraged he felt lightheaded. His body swayed unsteadily, and he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. Using all the strength in his body, he hollered, Zhan Mubai. Feck your granny. That man in black shouted angrily. Chao Guofeng. Don't get too cocky. He was so angry he had forgotten to conceal his real voice, only realizing his mistake after he spoke. He instantly shut up and stopped talking. But with a leap, he spat a mouthful of blood to the sky, as if he were using some sort of secret technique for accelerating, and vanished into the night skies at a shocking speed. The 7 Saint Emperors were all green in their faces. Chao Guofeng walked over slowly to the corpse on the ground, holding the slightest hope as he turned it around to look. His body swayed and another mouthful of blood spurted out as he fell on his back. What hope was there? This corpse was only in sleepwear, but its head was completely gone. But from the build, it was definitely a youth. The 3 Holy Lands. Zhan Mubai. The 2 of us cannot exist together. Chao Guofeng panted heavily, blood dripping from the corner of his lips, a sinister and crazed look in his eyes. The other 6 were also pale in the face, extremely furious. The 7 of them were just excitedly discussing how to nurture and guide this disciple of theirs, envisioning the future glory of their disciple, the birth of the second 9 nether first young master. Who would have known that in a turn of an eye, the disciple the 7 of them were preparing to wholeheartedly nurture had become a headless corpse. Dead through and through. This was the free and natural physique. The legendary free and natural physique. The 9 nether first young masters' physique. The 7 of them remained silent, turning around and heading resolutely back to the courtyard they were residing in, like 7 volcanoes on the verge of eruption. Every one of them was radiating an extremely dangerous aura. Right now, all the 7 of them had made up their mind, even if all 7 of them were to lose their lives here, they must vent this anger. Zhan Moxie. You must pay the price. Zhan Moxie's actions and words were clear. What I can't have, you guys can also forget about having it. Let's just go our own separate ways and have the 3 holy lands avoid the future crisis. Zhan Moxie had already done something like this once before. In Tian Fa Forest, sneak attacking Jun Moxie. Wasn't it the same? A scoundrel who didn't care about his reputation and sneak attacked a junior. What other despicable things was he incapable of? It was exactly the same situation this time. But Jun Moxie blatantly set himself against the 3 holy lands, so it was understandable although despicable. But this disciple of ours is only a silver xian. When he grows up, your old bones would already have turned into ashes. So what are you worried about? Just because we discovered a talent that doesn't belong to the 3 holy lands, you must kidnap and slaughter him? What sort of bullshit logic is this? Besides, the one you just killed is the future hope of our misty illusory manor. A legendary hope that would have lasted 300 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, or even comparable to the 9 nether first young master. Even if the news of this matter reaches the ears of misty illusory manor, it will be a situation that won't end until one of us is dead. Zhan Moxie, you thought that we wouldn't know that it is you just because you changed your voice. Aren't you taking everyone as a fool? Just with that Saint Emperor cultivation, that despicable behavior. In this entire world, aside from you, this trash Saint Emperor, who else is capable of doing something this despicable, this shameless, this underhanded? Who else can there be other than you? At the same time, the Zhan Moxie that was utterly hated by the 7 Saint Emperors had finally came to an agreement with the Saint Emperor experts from Elusive World of Immortals, Illusory Blood Sea, and Supreme Golden City. He was the leader for this operation by Elusive World of Immortal this time, and after paying hefty prices and promising many benefits, everyone had decided to do their best to help Zhan Moxie get this disciple. Zhan Moxie was finally relieved. Although he had paid a high price, but he still sincerely expressed his gratitude to everyone. Since the agreement had been made, everyone returned to their own rooms. And Zhan Moxie also returned to his own in deep thoughts. Although he obtained the promise from the experts from the 3 holy lands, but those from the misty illusory manor would definitely not let go so easily. How should I go about doing this without any risks? I still need to plan carefully. Either way, I am determined to get this disciple with the free and natural physique. I will not let anyone else have him. Just as he thought silently, dawn was already breaking. Suddenly, from after a way, an infuriated holler could be heard. Zhan Moxie. Feck your granny. This shout was so thunderous that the entire Chrysanthemum City probably heard it. This story will be continued to chapter 861. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.